So I want to welcome everyone tonight and introduce you to our guest, who is Judith Winfrey. She is a worker owner from Love Farm, a certified organic farm. And Judith and her other worker owners just had their fall sale, which was incredible. And she's going to tell us a little bit about organic gardening and how that uh, contributes to climate resiliency. I do want to give a shout out to Judith and an award that she was given by the New York Times back in 2021. And it was for International Women's Day. She was selected as one of the women who are changing the landscape of leadership. So we're very honored to have Judith join us.
And welcome to being one of our members too. So that's really cool.
Well, Judith and Joe.
Yes.
Yeah. So Judith, it's yours. And
thanks, y'all.
So
I just finished the fall plant sale, as Nancy said, and I didn't have maybe as much time to prepare as I had hoped when I agreed to do this back in June. But I thought it would be maybe good for me to review and go over an essay that I wrote actually for the Farm Bureau. I made a presentation to them. And it talks a little bit about the hows and the whys and the calling to do this work. And it definitely touches on climate change and farming as a resiliency strategy and farming in community as a resiliency strategy. And if it gets too boring, y'all just bang a gong. It's fine. So with that,
I will tell you that we usually have about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we take some questions, and you're free to stay with us or head on for your evening.
All right. Thanks, y'all. And Nancy, thanks so much for inviting me. Thanks to all of you for having me, and maybe more importantly, for the work that you do on behalf of sustainability in Newton County. I was real happy to find y'all when I moved out here 3 years ago. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about farms and farming, and why my farm and all farms are important to me, and why I see them as climate resiliency strategies, and why I believe that anyone who cares about the environment should support farms like mine. And I'm going to start with just a little bit of my family background. My grandfather on my father's side was a sharecropper, and not just any old poor sharecropper, but a one-armed sharecropper. Originally from Sand Mountain, Alabama. My grandfather lost his arm as a boy, and what compelled him and how he landed in Athens, Clarke County, growing crops and raising the 7 children who survived childhood poverty, I really don't know. I imagine that he just did what he had to do with the limited resources that were available to him. There's a lot of mythologies and legends around him, and the family's hard scrabble quest for survival. And of course, there are just as many around his wife, my grandmother, who by the time my dad was in high school in the late 1940s was the sole breadwinner in the family. And I guess that's sole if you don't count the children in the family who worked side jobs between and around school schedules. My dad worked on a truck delivering milk from a local dairy in high school. The family saw a lot of pain and loss, as you do when you're dealing with poverty. They also laughed a lot, and they were epic storytellers. I think that laughter and story are potent survival skills. From this side of the family, through my father, I absorbed a lot of beautiful and brutal lessons. From the soothing balm of an expression of love, a hug or a pat, a kind word, to the salve of laughter and the necessity of community, to the grief and the heartache brought on by the trauma of poverty. I witnessed firsthand the repeating pattern of injustice, suffering, and mental illness brought on by poverty. These are marks left by living in a system that's not set up for everyone to thrive and that doesn't have a reverence for life. As a girl, I studied these trends and I watched and I wondered, like, can't we do better? Is this society? Is this civilization? I still kind of ask myself these questions when I pull up to an intersection where someone is begging for food, shelter, or clothing. Is survival of the fittest really the system we want to live in? Can we evolve? Now, on my mom's side, my grandmother was a woman named Dixie, born in Cedartown, Georgia in 1902. And in case you're puzzling over that math, I came from a big blended family in which I'm the youngest. I was born late in life to my mom, who is also named Dixie. My grandmother, Dixie, was widowed in World War II. My grandfather didn't die in the war, but he died during that time and left behind 4 children. My mom, the youngest, was 9 when he died. My grandmother supported the family by writing natural histories for the Works Progress Administration in the state of Florida. The WPA, as you probably know, was a New Deal policy from Franklin Roosevelt that put 8.5 million Americans to work after the Great Depression. The WPA provided a lifeline to my mother's family in a desperate time. And I'm not really interested in making a case for any one political party or thought, though I do want to point out that a federal jobs program changed my family's trajectory from dire to survivable. And what this demonstrates to me is that every vote, every policy decision and action has the potential to impact the lives of humans for bad or for good. What we choose to accept and do collectively and individually could be life or death decisions somewhere, sometime, for someone, or even some creature. My mom's family didn't live on Easy Street, but there was stability and there were moments of joy and beauty. When my grandmother wasn't writing, she was at the sewing machine making beautiful costumes for my mother, whose singing voice won her a scholarship to Wesleyan College in Macon, Georgia. I learned a few important lessons from studying my family tree. My father's family, I came to understand that our economic system, based on ideas of extraction and accumulation, doesn't serve all people, nor the whole of life. Unspeakably cruel things happened to my father for no reason other than they were poor. These cruelties haunted him until the day he died. And to me, this is unacceptable. I believe that life is sacred, and I believe that we can and must build better systems that show an appropriate reverence for life. Through my mother's family, I learned the possibility and hope of systems and programs that help care and look after people. And I believe we need more of this. So we're going to fast forward. We're going to go all the way into the early aughts when I found myself falling deeply in love with a soulful, kind man who shared with me all kinds of deep and resonant ideas. He was and is a revolutionary, a peacenik, pacifist, but a revolutionary nonetheless. And, just so you don't get uncomfortable, I want to be clear that, like, to me, the word revolutionary, not unlike the word anarchist, is a term that's frequently misunderstood and inaccurately associated with violence, strife, and chaos. I'm opposed to violence, strife, and chaos. I'm interested in love, peace, joy, abundance, vitality, beauty, truth, and of course, love. I mean, we are Love is Love Farm after all. A name which, by the way, came from a punk rock song released by a band called Lungfish in the late 1990s. But back to revolutions. Webster's dictionary defines a revolution as a dramatic and wide-ranging change in the way something works or is organized, or in people's ideas about it. And when I use the word revolutionary, I'm really using it in that sense. I strongly believe that our society needs a revolution of ideas and values, that we desperately need to change the way things are working and the way we organize our priorities. We need to make these changes for our own good and for the good of all life on the planet. So meeting this man, Joe, helped me sort of understand my own truth, that I'm also a revolutionary and that I have been all my life. And it had been pretty lonely for me. So now I'm finally walking this path with this wonderful man with big blue eyes and soft lashes. And he was a co-conspirator, a collaborator, and a friend, an inspiration, and a fortress. His presence in my life was and is still profound. Stitched through our relationship is our shared love of food and travel and books and music and people. And we went on some pretty big adventures together and saw people all over the world struggling for land, autonomy, dignity, and freedom from exploitation. What in the world does this have to do with farming? I know you're wondering that, and I'm getting there. I'm just trying to ground you in a little bit of my truth for context. So in terms of farming, the good food really led the way. Joe and I had a plan to travel the world. We thought agricultural skills would be useful to take us on some of our journeys. So Joe got a job working on a farm, Crystal Organic Farm to be specific. And one of the happiest perks of the farm work on a small diversified farm is lots of extra vegetables. Crisp, spicy arugula, sweet, mellow baby turnips, juicy red heirloom tomatoes. Joe was bringing it all home, and we were eating and sharing as much as we could. The first time I took an heirloom tomato to my mom, it was 2005 or so, and it took her breath away. "My heavens," she exclaimed, "I have not seen a seed set in a tomato like this since the 1950s. That was my first sort of anecdotal glimpse into how much our food system had changed and how quickly. You simply couldn't find these kinds of tomatoes in the grocery store, where homogeneity and ease of transport ruled the aisles. By the early 2000s, food and grocery stores could be coming from almost anywhere in the world. Produce that's grown to ship thousands of miles, sometimes sitting on a truck or in a refrigerated warehouse for weeks before it makes it to the shelf, has not been selected for flavor, nutrition, or uniqueness. It's been selected to survive transport. The food from the farm, from Crystal Organic Farm, was not only abundant, unique, and flavorful, it was nutritious. Its nutrition and flavor greatly enhanced by both the shortened time from harvest and the care for the soil inherent in certified organic biodynamic farming. I swear that this good, fresh food stirred in me a consciousness shift. Maybe my brain was just better functioning as a result of the richer nutrient intake. Whatever it was, I felt lighter, clearer, somehow enhanced, more in tune with life, and even more grounded, pun intended, as a result of the dietary changes. So it was with this newfound brain power and consciousness that I found myself sitting, Joe by my side, at a conference for organic farmers in 2005 at the Charlie Elliott Wildlife Center in Mansfield, Georgia, a town about which I knew nothing then, but in a town in which now I obviously have a farm. We were there to hear the keynote address from Janice Ray, award-winning author, Georgia Writers Hall of Fame member, resident of Baxley, Georgia. If you haven't read haven't heard of her or read her book about growing up in a junkyard in Southeast Georgia, I think you should. The book, Ecology of a Cracker Childhood, is a love letter to place, to the endangered longleaf pine forests of the coastal plains, to all the creatures therein, and to the rural South. Janice's address at the Georgia Organics Conference, an impassioned and riveting plea to save ourselves from the perils of corporate control of seeds and life and towns, brought the crowd to its feet. One super tough South Georgia cattle farmer, a friend, later confessed that he wiped away big old knuckle-sized tears from his cheeks as she spoke. How do we save ourselves from the dehumanizing onslaught of homogeneity and detachment that big box stores are bringing? Janice's idea was elegant and simple. We grow food, We buy food from people who grow it. We save seeds. We can stay connected to our humanity and to the life forces of the planet through these simple acts. This idea began to take hold in me and Joe. We had found our tribe, we'd found our cause, we found our people. We might have been drawn to learn about farming in order to see the world, but the world had other plans for us. I'm going to pause and check in. Are you guys miserable? Do you want me to keep going?
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep
Okay.
going.
Going.
I could stop here and just fill you in, but I'll keep going. The dots were starting to connect. You know, if you're worried about climate change, farming has the solutions. If you're worried about the loss of autonomy and corporate takeovers of our culture, farming has the solutions. Worried about extraction and unmitigated greed, farming has some solutions. Worried about exploitation of life, especially human life, farming can have solutions. Worried about health, farming has solutions. Education, farming is so foundational that almost no facet of human life can't draw a direct line to a farm. Joe and I started our own farming operation in 2008, and up until that time and up until recently, have farmed as landless farmers on leased land around Metro Atlanta. A few years ago, we were lucky enough to meet some young farmers who had incredible experience, who shared our passion for pragmatic activism, and who were looking for land. In 2019, we began planning our worker-owned cooperative farm business, looking for land and raising the capital we needed to make it all happen. By 2021, we found our farmland and started to stand up a new kind of farm business. We're a worker-owned cooperative, meaning that the 5 farmers collectively own and operate this farm. Through a program started by the Conservation Fund, our farmland is permanently conserved, which, among other things, means that the soil we're building now will never have a house foundation or a road laid over it. Our vision is to create a unique business that can continue in perpetuity with new, younger farmers coming in to take the reins as the older generations retire and return to dust. A business that can feed a community and provide meaningful, fulfilling work for generations to come. A business that can nourish a community with nutritious and vital food. Food, like farming, is foundational. How many times have you heard this expression, you are what you eat? But have you ever really considered it? I mean, really? One of my favorite all-time quotes comes from Carlo Petrini, who was the founder of Slow Food International. And if you don't know Slow Food, it's an inspiring organization that began with a protest in Italy, organized by Petrini when McDonald's was being constructed near the Spanish Steps in Rome. Petrini brought an army of Italian grandmothers to hand out plates of homemade pasta and ask Italians some important questions, such as, how does our food define us as Italians and reflect our values and culture? Are we going to allow global corporations to dictate food and flavor? I saw Petrini speak in 2008, where I heard him make the most cogent point about food. I'm probably going to paraphrase wildly, but basically he said, food is the most important thing you will ever purchase. Food is the only thing that you will ever purchase that literally becomes who you are. It becomes your eyes and your hair and your brain and your skin. And yet you're always searching for cheap food. You'll spend $100 or more for shoes to help you run fast, or Armani underwear to make you feel sexy. He's Italian. But you neglect the most vital, important purchase. Food should be valued more than any other purchase, to me. Just as the food we buy and eat impacts our own bodies and our brains, and so then our thoughts and experiences, it also impacts our community and the ecosystem of the planet. I think of a bell ringing with resonant sound waves moving through your body and out into the world, into the ground and the air and the waters. The choices you make about what you eat have that kind of an impact. They reverberate through everything. And here's a quick, simple example from the Thanksgiving table. A sweet potato casserole made with sweet potatoes from a local organic farm. If it's our farm, it also happens to be a worker-owned cooperative farm that operates on permanently conserved farmland. We would have just planted them in early summer. They would have sat in the field, probably feeding some deer through the summer, and been harvested just a few weeks before Thanksgiving. Purchasing sweet potatoes from our farm or Oxford College Farm or Crystal Organic or any other local farm would be a choice to cast a vote for the kind of world you want, in the words of Anna LePay. You could choose to serve sweet potatoes from California, trucked here for 2,500 miles or so, and that would be a vote for unnecessary carbon expenditures when sweet potatoes grow so much closer to home. You could choose to serve sweet potatoes that were sprayed with a chemical that's been banned in Europe for toxicity concerns. Chloroprofam is still used in the US to prevent sprouting in harvested sweet potatoes. It's a skin and eye irritant that converts to a carcinogen in the body. It's considered by the FDA to be safe in small doses, but most people in the developed world are way overexposed. I won't go into all the details about chloroprofam and what it's been demonstrated to do to amphibians and honeybees, but I will say it's not good. And I don't think we should be commonly using chemicals that are known to harm our pollinators and our keystone species. I think it's worth noting here that amphibians are not only keystone, meaning that they're the foundation to an entire food shed, and when they're gone, it collapses. But amphibians are also a sentinel species, meaning they provide advanced warning of danger. Think about canaries in coal mines, another sentinel species. We need our pollinators, our keystone and sentinel species, to keep our ecosystem intact and to keep us safe. So you could vote for sweet potatoes that have trace elements of a chemical banned in Europe that is also known to harm critical animal species. Or you could vote for sweet potatoes that have been cultivated with no harmful pesticides for you or our animal friends. You could serve sweet potatoes from one of the many farms prosecuted by the Department of Justice for holding workers against their will and forcing them to work in inhumane conditions. Since 1998, there have been 9 indictments and 7 convictions for such conditions, involving as many as 700 workers. You could unknowingly be serving sweet potatoes harvested by modern-day slaves, exploited, not unlike my grandfather, because of their poverty. Or you could vote for the dignity of a worker by serving sweet potatoes grown on a worker-owned cooperative farm, where decisions about how to accomplish the work are made collectively and by consensus. You could serve sweet potatoes purchased at a local grocery chain store. Sorry about that, at a local grocery chain. Grown by one of the many farms in North Carolina producing sweet potatoes, or Mississippi, Louisiana. According to an assessment produced by Michigan State University Center for Community and Economic Development, there are at least 9 good reasons to support a local business over a non-local business, including job creation, local investment through charitable contribution, increased local tax revenue, decreased use of local infrastructure, supporting entrepreneurship, keeping the community unique. All of these are reasons. The most compelling reason I find is local economic circulation. For every $100 spent at a local business, 73 of them stay in the local economy, circulating through wages, supplies, local services, taxes, and community donations. Compare this with the 43 that stay when you spend with a non-local business. That's a 70% increase in local economic impact when you spend at a locally owned business. So you could vote to contribute more to the economy of North Carolina, Mississippi, or Louisiana. And I mean, I love all those places, but I live here and so do you. So you could vote to support the people and the businesses just 5 miles from your home, a few miles from your home. So these are just a few examples of how the consequences of what we choose to eat ripple through not only our bodies, but through the community, the economy, and the ecosystem around us. Luckily, in Newton County, we have a lot of options to vote for and buy locally grown, certified organic sweet potatoes, and lots of other great vegetables and proteins from farms right around us. The sweet potato example is one small look into the vast array of issues woven into the complicated tapestry of food and farming, and it really just begins to scratch the surface. Farming as an occupation, as a climate change solution, farming as community health intervention, farming as local economic development, as activism, farming as community service. It's so much deeper than it seems. And it's what's called me and Joe and many other young farmers that we know to do the work. I'm not calling myself young, just for the record, in case you're wondering, but I know a lot of young farmers who are called to the work. It's intricately complex and it's nuanced and it's hardly ever binary. And that's exactly like life. We live in and are a part of this fragile yet resilient, sometimes horrifying and astoundingly gorgeous interdependent system. We need each other to live and thrive. Other living things need us to recognize this and make choices that support their vitality too. Farmers, I believe, are at the forefront of this dialogue with the living system that supports us all. Why does the lettuce that you eat matter? Why does the beef, the cheese, the bread, the sweet potatoes? The answer's simple, and it's also overwhelming. In both directions of the transaction, inward and outward, the things we eat, that we buy, and where we buy them, the things that we put into our mouths impact our lives and the lives of those around us more deeply than almost anything else. I hope you'll think about it at your next meal. I hope you'll get to know a farmer in Newton County if you don't already. I'm sure you all do. And I hope you'll support their operation if you don't already. I hope you'll grow a little garden. I hope that one day we will have wholesale policy changes that support our collective and individual well-being, as well as that of the planet. But until that day, I think we have to make these kinds of daily votes for the world we want, and we have to make the path by walking. I'm going to close with a quote from Janice Ray. The assumption is that hope is a prerequisite for action. Without hope, one becomes depressed and then unable to act. I want to stress that I do not act because I have hope. I act whether I have hope or not. It is useless to rely on hope as motivation to do what's necessary and just and right. Why doesn't anybody ever talk about love as a motivation to act? I may not have a lot of hope, but I have plenty of love, which gives me fight. And we're going to have to fall in love with place again and again and learn to stay put. Thanks, y'all. I do love this place. I'm very happy to call Newton County my home.
That was beautiful. I would like to ask you, because I know you contribute greatly to the community and to the well-being of the community. Recently, the Newton County school system received an FDA grant for all kindergartners, I believe it is, to have fruits,
Kindergarteners, yeah.
have fruits and vegetables. And are you participating in that?
I am, yeah. I mean, our farm.
And how are you participating? Because that's a really important. We have so many food deserts in our county, and for children to be able to have access to fruits and vegetables, it's very important. So can you speak to that?
Sure. The grant, it's a USDA grant. It's a farm to school grant. And it's in collaboration with the Newton Education Foundation and an organization in Atlanta called Small Bites Adventure Club that does nutrition education. And it's evidence-based. Small Bites Adventure Club has developed an evidence-based curriculum that helps teachers teach nutrition education in classrooms, because what we know, what the research has showed us, is that kids don't have to eat vegetables when they're young, but they have to see them. They have to smell them. They have to be exposed to them for there to ever be a fighting chance that they're going to eat them. And so the curriculum really helps teachers get kids just to think about fresh fruits and vegetables. There's a certification process that the teachers will go through. There's in-classroom activities that will happen. There's some collaboration with the school nutrition director, and some food from local farms will get put into the cafeterias, and hopefully the kids will also have a chance to meet a local farmer. And there'll be some field trips and some family farm days, where the kids and the pre-K and kindergarten youth who have gone through these programs will come to farms and just meet a farmer and talk about vegetables.
Well, I think that's just so wonderful because that's really where we've got to make the impact is with young children, because that's how you make change, and you make change in the world is to start with our youth. So thank you for your participation in
Absolutely.
that critical program. As I said before, we have a lot of food deserts, and it's really important that our school children are fed. So I'm going to open up the floor to anyone else who has questions. Rob.
So Judith, thank you for that. I grew up in the peach business, and so I don't know a lot about tomatoes and so forth, but I was so distressed with the new Publix in Covington, that they had in the peach state, they had one little display of Georgia peaches and then peaches from California and Pennsylvania. How do you get the big stores to buy local and sell local rather?
It's a good question. I mean, it's a puzzle, and part of the problem is that I think their systems don't align with our systems. They're not, I alluded to it a little bit in the essay, like they're interested in shelf life. They're interested in price points, and I understand why they have to be. I think consumer pressure is a good way to get them to change. My answer for myself is move around them. I don't have, I'm not a policy person because I don't have a lot of patience for policy. And the same with changing institutions. My solution was build something new, but that's not to say that you can't change an institution. I think you got to put a lot of pressure. We're working on selling into a big institution in Atlanta right now. And this is an institution that's promised to buy local food. And it has been like 3 years of consistent, persistent follow-up, advocacy, pressure, follow-up, advocacy, pressure. And I don't even think it's that they don't want to buy our food or food from other smaller farms. It's just that it's a really big hierarchical top-down organization, and the person who is making the orders wants to do it as easily as possible. And the people that help them do it easily are the big wholesale distributors that are bringing in food from everywhere, because they can pick up the phone at 10 o'clock at night and say, I need X number of cases of this thing that isn't seasonal, and they can get it.
Thank you.
Do you have any of your foods in the local restaurants? Any of your products in the local restaurants?
Yeah, I mean, depending on your definition of local, we've sold a little bit on and off to that marketplace called Lily and Sparrow that's right off the square. They have a little store. We have sold in the past to City Grocery. Am I getting that right?
City Pharmacy.
City Grocery is a restaurant in Oxford, Mississippi. Anyway, I always get them confused. City Pharmacy. But we haven't for a while. The Row sometimes in Monroe will buy food from us, but those are like the closest to us. We sell quite a bit to restaurants in Atlanta and Decatur. If y'all ever go to Decatur, go to Chai Pani.
Okay.
How do you decide what to grow each season, or is it pretty much the same row crops each year?
I mean, our our farm is on half-acre rotation. So we were always rotating the crops around, and some crops go fallow with cover crops for a season. I said all of our decisions are made by consensus. So there's often some discussion and some, people bring creative ideas. And then, we're looking at the data about what was productive and what, customers seem to respond to. And, the youngest of the 5 worker owners is a man named Demetrius, who's 29 years old, but who just like at 18 somehow knew he was going to be a farmer. And just like, even though he grew up in DeKalb County and went to North Druid Hills High School, and he is like focused on productivity of the crops. This year he had a goal to get, I don't remember what the certain amount was. I want to say it was like 5 pounds of strawberries per plant. And you can ask Ashley Best, he took tissue samples every single week for like 3 months and was sending them to UGA to do the analysis to see what the nutrition needed to be, to get the yield that he was hoping to get. And so that is to say, he does a lot of our crop planning, and he's really focused on production and yields. So that also makes some of the decisions. I'm really, really happy. We're about to go into a partnership with a distributor that's focused on local food distribution up and down the East Coast, called Happy Dirt. They're out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And they want us to be their radicchio grower, which I adore radicchio. So I'm so happy about this, because otherwise I don't think we would grow it.
So you mentioned letting some of your plots go fallow and putting cover crops on them. Do you have any recommendations for for cover crops this winter?
Yeah, I mean, depending on your space, I mean, Sarah probably has some ideas too. I know you're a grower. I mean, I think crimson clover is a real pretty cover crop that stays low. In the winter, we'll do a lot of grasses like sorghum Sudan grass, which gets pretty tall. A rye, of course, but
I guess you have to determine what's your pH and what your soil analysis is to determine which
like what nutrients do you want to add, or do you really need more tilth? Like there's a lot of different things that go into it.
Anyone else have questions for Judith? We have about 5 more minutes. Do I see a hand up? Let me see if I can. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, Judith, we want to thank you.
Oh, thank
and
you.
How do we get in touch with you if we need to?
Our website is loveislovefarm.com. And you can reach me through that website, or you can just send me an email, judith@loveislovefarm.com.
Right.
Thanks for your time, y'all. I appreciate you listening to me yammer on.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank
All right.
you.
Have a good night.
Appreciate it.